So here we are in the second half of the Mammoth Part 5. We're going to pick up where we left off, getting into HDOS and using it, and using the semi-virtual disk, and that to copy files and generally using the system in the state it's in now. We'll then go over some of the things that were done in order to get the semi-virtual disk running in the system, and some of the work that had to be done on the drive prior to the works that was shown initially. And we'll finish off with a nice assembly video for those who like watching electronics assembly and maybe thinking of building an SVD themselves. I will say that this is an SVD version, the original. There is a version 3 design. I couldn't find any Gerbers online, which is why I built the older one. The newer one uses the same firmware. There's some discussion currently in the group about getting some changes made, so it's well worth checking the current situation before you do anything. And the best way you can do that probably is to keep up with the Remarks magazine. I'm not sure if I've mentioned it before. This is a sort of a redo over of the old Heathkit user group Remark magazine, put together by Glenn. It's up to issue 4 now, and is a good look at the current H8 scene, and is well worth following. I'll link it below. It's on the now on the main user group site anyway, so quickly able to get at. And the issue 3 covers the semi-virtual disk along with other disk options that are available to the budding Heathkit owner and user. So let's take it away with the HDOS from our prompt where we ended up in the first part. And alter again, and then go. And the machine should boot, which we've got the action boot prompt up on the console. I can press return. Screen got blank because interrupts. I've got my little switch to disable the interrupt to bring it back. And now I can put it back again to interrupts because HDOS has loaded its vector tables and will be able to handle the settings. I already booted this earlier, which is why the date is set to 30th of June 2009. So I press return. We'll get another disk ready to have a play with, which I'm going to assume they were blank. We'll put this out of the way a little bit so we can see what we're doing. So now we have a booted version of HDOS. So I had been doing some research for a product called the SVD, serial virtual disk, which is basically a PIC and some RAM that allows you to simulate a hard sectored drive by sticking up to 3 images in RAM. HDOS 1.5 can only actually use 2 of the images. It runs on a number of machines. It's a 32-bit software that's supplied for controlling it though for Linux, so you have to install a 32-bit subsystem. And we're going to take a look at the construction of an SVD at the end of the video. For those who like watching construction videos, that unit was then able to be fitted into my H17. I removed the blanking plate for drive 2, and I found an old 5¼ inch hard drive mounting frame that I adapted to fit the completed SVD in. It didn't fit the RS232 level converter chip, the Max 232. I just took it straight as a TTL feed, and I brought that out to the front along with the reset switch so that I can easily jack in, upload some virtual disk images and come back out again. So it's quite an easy to use bit of software. Let's just show you the SVD. That's plugged in with the other TTL serial, and that's the reset button. So I'll plug the second USB cable in now, USB to TTL serial, which one goes in that way up. Okay, and we should now still be able to use the machine yet. So on here now we go to SVD and we start the program, serial virtual disk, which will boot it onto the console. We don't need to be able to see the directory at the moment, but we'll leave them both visible on the screen. Okay, and what we need to know now is just check that the SVD is working. Responding just peachy because it's been set. If we didn't have it, we had to set a different RS232 device. You can set it from here, but it's already set to USB 1 from the last time it was used. So now I can load a disk into the drive. If we remember, the drive is currently set using the dip switches to be disk 2, which means it's the first disk, system 0, because they run backwards. So disk 1 will always be the second drive, and disk 0 is only usable on versions higher than HDOS 1.5, HDOS 2 I believe. So if I find the file, and we'll load the adventure disk image, which we can do. Obviously that then needs to be put into the actual SVD RAM. So we download it, and that downloads the floppy. So that's happening now. And here we go. Takes a little while to download it, but now it's there. You can now unplug the serial port if you wanted to, but we'll leave it available for us to look. And I should be able to do a cat. Oh no, I don't. Oops. If I do a mount SY1, which mounts the image that's just gone into the virtual drive, and it should scan the disk. Now it's obviously, you can hear the clicking of the drive because it's using the system disk, but it's now seen the adventure disk. So if I do a cat of SY1, you will see the contents of the adventure disk. There we go. And we will also be able to do a type SY1 readme. The delete just gives the backslash, just indicates it's deleted that letter. Ooh. Help if I actually put the O in. And sure enough, there is the contents of the README file for Adventure. I did make one slight change to the drive itself. The patch chip was unplugged, and I just replaced it with a standard DIL switch, so I can easily flick it between being the primary drive or a secondary drive, or completely as drive 3 out of the way, so SVD can be both drives if I need to, fairly easily just by lifting the lid and changing those over. One of the things I did do as well was to get the drive some more of the checks done from the manual. One of the most important ones was drive speed, and that needed adjusting because it has to be as close as it can to exactly 1, and there's a little pot on the board which can be used to adjust the speed, and that was twiddled and I got exactly a 1. I also did a full check on the first dissected floppy I managed to get hold of. That also allowed a full surface check of the disk to make sure and format the disk and make sure everything was working correctly. I also did the track speed test as well, and the drive can go down to a surprisingly fast inter-track rate. So all in all, it looks like it's a drive in very good condition, able for us to move forward with. So that allowed me to get a virtual image of the discs loaded up, and I managed to get the adventure disc loaded, and I was able to then look at some of the files on it. Unfortunately, with only a 16K system, it's not enough to be able to use it when you read the README. So it was lucky I'd ordered those additional RAM chips for the 4K board, because that we're taking that to 8K. So now we're going to look at our floppy, and we're going to learn how to format it and deal with it from the Heathkit manual, which you would have followed. I mean, obviously I've been through this once to prove the drive is functional, which has got quite a bit of theory and files and how it works, how to power up, which we did, to boot 2030, the boot prompt, which you've seen, and setting the date, and now initialization to prepare the disk for processing. So we're going to start the init program. This is a self-contained program, loads into memory completely, which means I can now remove the system disk. Put away safe. And we can stick a floppy in the drawer and return. So here's a init. Do we want to proceed? Yes, we do. So we're going to insert and format this disk. So oh, why did that fail to go in? Okay, it was previously formatted, but I'm going to overwrite this completely. And this is volume number 2 I've built. And this is going to be Tim HDOS 1.5. And that's the drive clicking away formatting. Okay. Now we don't know any bad sectors on this disk because I didn't actually run a check on the surface for this, so I'm not going to have any that I know. Okay, I don't want to initialize any more disks. Well, it should be a bootable disk now. Which if we hit boot, will crash obviously, allow the interrupt to go through, and we didn't sysgen it. So we have to put a disk in the drive, which we can do sysgen from. So we'll put our system disk back in. Boot. Have to allow the interrupt to happen. You have to come up with a better way of doing the interrupts. There should be a way around it. So we could do a test which allows to do quite a lot of diagnostics. I did run it once through, and you should see some pictures on the screen from the testing that we've managed to do. I did a drive speed test as well and adjusted the settings. There's a media check option as well, which you can do to check the media. I've done a seek time test as well. This drive can go pretty quick, and you can try that on the second drive as well. But we're coming up now to page 30 and the system generation. So this is the sysgen program. So we remove the disk, return, okay, hit the insert the distribution source disk. Well, actually that's the same disk we just took out, so we could have left it in place. Okay, got a bleep, and I need to put our destination disk in. Now, of course, I could have cheated and done this by loading changing the drive round and having the SVD as the boot disk. I think it's quite instructive to see what you would have had to do with a single drive back then. And there's obviously quite a bit of disk swapping to put the disk in. couple of times to get the data copied over. While that's happening, I've got a page marked here, which I've got some stickers in it. So I'm going to get a sticker, and I'm going to make up a sticker for this to say it is the HDOS disk. Notice that the display goes completely blank while it's actually doing a lot of drive work. There we go, and this is now a bootable disk, so I can press return and boot from it. It'll crash. Allow the IRQs. And set the date still. And if we do a cat, there will be very little on the disk because it doesn't actually contain most of the programs. But if I do a cat/s, you will see all the hidden files that are hidden by flags, which allow it to be a bootable HDOS disk. So in order to copy the programs that are on that, we will need to follow the next step using the copy draw. We can use one copy to copy things on a single drive. In this case though, we're going to use the SVD again and put the HDOS 1.5 disk in as a virtual disk and copy over the needed programs to this floppy to save wear on our original one. Okay, so we're going to now copy those files over, which means we need to go back to our virtual disk, and we need to load a different virtual disk in. And we are going to find the HDOS 1.5 disk, which I think is this one. Okay, and download it to the SVD, same as we did before. Now we have my nicely labelled HDOS 1.5 system, and that's copying over. I can put that in the drive. It's actually the one that was booted. I shouldn't have taken it out because it hasn't been unmounted. Now that's in, we should be able to go back to the terminal, and I should be able to do a cat on the disk, prove it's still operational. It is, and as we said, there's nothing on there, but I should now be able to mount SY1. Which is the HDOS 1.5, so now if I cat SY1, we will be able to see the files on the System1 disk, which are the various programs we might want to have. So for example, if we want to be able to run BASIC from this disk, and it needs to be on here. So we would need to copy those files over from one drive to the other. What did I say? We could use one copy for a single drive, but we also have just the plain copy command as well, which is part of if you've got twin drives. So if I can remember the format of it, I believe it is copy SY1, it is copy, so edit.abs equals SY1 : edit.abs, and that should copy from the SVD to the copy. Yeah, it does. Okay, so we just go through now, copying each of the files from the image we have on SY1. ABS, of course, is the file type for an executable program on HDOS. So there's the assembler, ASM, and copy. I don't know whether it allows wildcards. HDOS, I've never tried it. Shall we see? It does, so I could have just done a copy star.abs anyway if I'd wanted to. But I've done most of them now, so it doesn't matter. So now if I do a cat on this drive, we should have a full copy of the system disk with exactly the same six sectors free. So that disk is now a fully copyable, and we can run BASIC, because you actually need a write enabled disk to be able to run BASIC. So this should be Benton Harbor BASIC, extended Benton Harbor BASIC, done. So we can do the classic. Do a list, and there we go, and we do a run. There we go, running away in Benton Harbor BASIC. And Control C, which gets us back. So there we are, that's the system up and running and ready for some adventures with more things. And there's lots to do. It's a really big, thick manual with lots of functionality in the system of HDOS itself to learn about. So plenty to look forward to, I think, as we explore the system. There we go. So for those who like a good assembly video, there's quite a bit of footage of putting together the SVD. I put together the parts from what I had in stock, and also needed to buy a few bits. The RAM chips were a little bit unusual, didn't have them. I chose to use a PIC H17 because I've got loads of them, obviously. I ordered the PCBs from one of the well-known sites. I'm sure loads of other channels have got adverts for them. And they arrived fairly quickly, so I had a few made. So if someone in the UK is desperate, I do have one or two spares. And I basically put it together in the new electronics workshop. I'm setting them up upstairs, which is absolutely filled with loads of projects I need to work on. So today I'm going to build the virtual disk, the SVD. Which is basically a PIC-based emulation of disk drive, which can do hard-sectored emulation in RAM. So if you've got an RS-232 connection, which transmits a couple of disk images into the RAM chips, and the PIC then simulates the output of the machine. It becomes a floppy drive, effectively, with some LEDs. I'm not going to fit the Max 232 and the RS-232 connector and the caps that relate to that. Although I've got them put the kit together pretty much ready. I'm gonna just solder the lead on and just tap off the TX and RX from the PIC directly, which means I can just use a standard 5V USB to TTL on a small, I'll make another little adapter lead for this, which can just plug in on there, so that we can pick it off and use that for the moment for testing purposes. I will probably construct everything else. So I've blown a PIC with the someone maintains, although it's a 16C74. This one is actually a 16877, which is pin compatible, and someone maintains a version of the 2.4 ready synthesized or compiled, assembled I suppose it is, because it's a processor, assembled code, which should just work off the bat. So onwards, and I think I've got everything I need. The only query I've got is that it's one of them is shown on the one of the chips, the 393. I've got an LS, not a plain one. But the schematic seems a little bit mixing up LS chips in some of them. But I've got a 7400 for the motor and the drive ones, assuming it's something to do with their drive currents. Anyway, we shall see how it goes together and give it a test in the H8. Okay, so that's the socket soldered onto the board. Very easy. I've only done a couple of the pins on the Mac socket because I'm just going to push some clip leads in to use it for a USB. So let's get the crystal, the LEDs and resistors and caps fitted and move onwards. So that took me a while to work out. This pin here is ground because it goes to this part of the reset switch connector. It's not marked on here. I assume it wasn't an electrolytic originally. So I think that's basically the positive side down that way. So just in case anyone else is building one of these boards. So I'm going to fit a ham connector this way up because I'm going to mount this in the H17 case likely. So there's plenty of room, so I don't need a side one. It's not going to go in a case like the one that has it right angles, and of course these are the ones I've actually got, so that'll be fine. That's pretty much the completed board as I'm going to do it. I'm going to make a little adapter now to stick the connectors in there, and I'll make a little reset switch on a flying lead. I'm not fitting these 4 caps obviously because they're if you fit the Max 232, which I'm not going to, nor the header. It's just a matter of plugging the chips in. Unfortunately the RAMs haven't arrived yet, so I can't test it today. But I probably can. I can put the pick in and prove it powers up, and I can see it through the serial comms, so I expect it'll do something. So I'll have a little experiment with that. I probably won't record much more video now, so I'm actually trying the board somewhere where it needs some sort of voltage feed. Anything above about 6 or 7 volts should allow the regulator to generate 5 volts on board. Okay, well that's the board built. I built an adapter for the power for the moment. I think actually I'm probably going to direct wire up one of these connectors so it can hook up inside the H17 case, but this will allow us to test it. And I've made up a little reset switch from an older reset. It's the only one I had, but it is a momentary action, so it will act as a reset. And I've made up a little 3 standard TTL 5 volt connector. I didn't usually use blue for the RX, but I didn't have that, but it's still, I think red is TX, so it's still good to go. Basically now if I power it up off the off a sort of a 9 volt supply, we should have a 5 volt rail on the chips, and we got a little green light, which is good. I better move all these bits of wire out the way so we can show the board, and hopefully we should have a 5 volt rail on the chips. So I go from ground to there, put the meter on 5 volts, 20 rather. We should have a 5 volt rail on the chips. And ground is there, I think, and 5 volts there. Yep, 4.99 volts. So I think just check it's on the pick as well. Yeah, pick's got some unusual places it gets its voltage, isn't it? Across the middle there somewhere. There. Maybe. Can't remember now. Really ought to check. But I think the EEPROMs are similar. got a ground and a 5-volt rail in the same place, yep. But the pick isn't, I don't think. So I better just check it's the same pin out for now. I'm sure it's across the centre of the chip somewhere. I better get a pick pin out and check it, hadn't I? Let's check the other chip. It's not far, it's 5 volts the other way up. You've got to watch it, some of the chip orientations are the other way up. .5 volt there. Okay. So that's looking good. The regulator's operating, not under load. So we're ready to go. So I'll plug the pick in. I'm going to check the pick pin out and just make sure I haven't made a mistake. Now, everywhere I checked, it isn't actually an LS393. It is a supposed to be just a plain 393, which I haven't got in stock, so I'd have to order. But I'm going to power it up with a 393. Hopefully it'll be okay. An LS rather, at least to test it. It might not be able to drive the circuit, but looking at the circuit I can't see why an LS isn't usable, but maybe I've missed something. So it's disconnected from the power, so the LS goes in that way up, so it's the with pin with notch downwards, and the 75452 line driver, which is marked as a 5.3 on the circuit board. But there's my little straightener gone. Oh, I lost it already. There we go. So that goes again with its down. Okay, and the 74LS33. Goes with the notch outwards there. And the 7400, it is actually a 7400, not an LS. And that goes again with the notch out there. And then the pick, I was right, the pick power is on the centre pins 11 and 12, so check that, it's fine. And the pick should just drop into this space here. Okay, so it's starting to come together, looking reasonable. Do we take a chance on powering it up and see if it does anything? The power light comes on. But obviously we've no idea if the pick will do anything, so we could, in theory, reset. It doesn't seem to do anything, but we'll need to see if anything's coming out of the serial port so we can talk to it, which means hooking up to the Max 232 layout and hooking up to a USB controller on a machine downstairs perhaps. So we'll knock the electronics workshop on the head and go and have a little try next to a computer. A slightly better computer than what I got on electronics.